While living in South India at an ashram, I spent an entire 6 months in complete silence. Hi, I'm Arielle, creator of Heal Through Dance. In this video, I'm going to tell you how I came across ecstatic dance. So the most asked question, or the frequently asked question that I get is, how did you come about ecstatic dance? So while I was doing my corporate America job, out of college, working, I was attaining everything in the materialistic world that I thought would make me happy. And once I have accumulated some wealth and had some travel and felt very accomplished in my life, I remember the day in my late 20s when I asked the universe, is this it? Is this all there is? Because I had attained money, materialistic things, travel, and success, and I thought that was going to make me happy. That's what the society was saying would make me happy. If I went to college, got a job, earned money, and bought all this stuff, that I would be happy. It turns out that I found out that did not make me happy. I looked beautiful on the outside and had all these materialistic things to show for the money I was making, but I was lacking something. So once I asked the universe what else there was to life, I began to get these kind of little messages from the universe that I was supposed to become a yoga teacher, which was really weird because I wasn't a yoga practitioner. I didn't really have an interest or affinity towards yoga, although I had grown up around seeing yoga. My mother had been a yogi. It didn't really resonate with me. In fact, I remember being in the University of Florida, and I worked at the gym as a personal trainer, and you got to take all of the classes for free since you worked there. And I remember seeing yoga on the schedule, and I thought, why not? So I went to this yoga class, and looking back now, it was not the best class to go to right out of the gate. It was a Kundalini yoga class where the teacher showed up. He had never cut his hair. He was wearing a little white robe or loincloth, and he began the class with this really powerful fire breath, which totally freaked me out. I remember sitting in the back of the room and literally crawling out of the back door. So after that, I didn't try yoga again until once I was out of college, and I had met my adult friends out of college, and one of my work colleagues had invited me to go to yoga and brunch with her and her friends. So upon going to this yoga class, I told them, listen, I've not really done yoga. This isn't really my thing, but I'm gonna try it. And I was really kind of just there to go to brunch. So in this yoga class, the teacher's leading the class. It's nice enough, everything's going just fine. And she says the word pigeon. We're now going to go into pigeon. And she hadn't demonstrated the posture yet. Well, unbeknownst to me, my body started to move, and I went into the full expression of this posture without ever seeing it, hearing it, or being demonstrated in this class. At that moment, the teacher looks over and says, and this is the full expression. As soon as we get out of class and go to brunch, my friends are like, thought you'd never done yoga before. And I said, I haven't. Well, that must have stuck with me, that imprint of that experience, because then when people would ask me, oh, are you a yoga teacher? And I wasn't, it started to make me think, maybe there's something to this. I took more yoga classes, I found a local ashram, and I started doing kirtan, which is the devotional chanting. At the same time, I had been in talk therapy for like 2 years, talking out my childhood trauma and just talking out my issues with a therapist. And it was going well. It was making some type of dent in my conscious awakening, and it was helping me. But I want to say that once I started doing the yoga and then went to this kirtan, devotional chanting, the first time I did kirtan, I think the chanting session was supposed to be just a couple hours, but I think it went much longer into the evening, and we ended up singing together in this group for what might have been 4 or 5 hours together. I left that experience, and I just remember, thank goodness it was a Friday evening, because for the next 2 days, all of this emotion began to erupt out of me like a volcano. It was like everything I had ever, suppressed as a child and throughout my life. It was like everything that I was trying to get to in therapy to release and heal, all of a sudden erupted out of me like a violent volcano. It was amazing. It was an amazing cathartic release. And I, to this day, can't believe it was the chanting that seemed to spark that. So by now, I'm getting to realize there's something to this yoga, there's something to these practices. My next course of action was to try meditation. So I got a book about meditation, and I was reading about meditation, and I believe in this book it mentioned fasting could help you. So my next time I had a few days off work, I said, this is it. I'm gonna fast for a few days and I'm gonna try meditation. So I started fasting on that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, going to several yoga classes at my gym. I remember almost passing out on the third day. I definitely wasn't doing it right. But I went home and I had bought an expensive meditation pillow, and I set my meditation pillow up, turned on the incense, the candle, whatever they sold to me at the shop that I thought I needed for meditation. So I sat on this cushion, and I'll never forget closing my eyes, and they popped back open, and it had not even been 60 seconds. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to learn meditation on my own. By this time, I had started to meet other people who were into yoga, and I met someone who wanted to introduce me to his yoga teacher from India. I was very resistant at first, and then after he worked on me some time, I gave in and I went and met this yoga teacher from India. Well, I did feel something at this yoga talk that sparked me, and I thought, wow, I'm gonna take this yoga program. I'm gonna learn how to meditate. This journey took me from America all the way to the Himalayas. I ended up going on a 30-day trek throughout the Himalayas. And during this experience, I had some unexplainable energetic awakenings happen to me. I remember coming down out of the Himalayas after trekking for 30 days straight. And I just remember the moment in time walking down this mountain and looking at the trees all around. And all of a sudden, it was like I began to become a part of the forest, a part of the mountain. It was like my consciousness or my awareness expanded out of my body. And all of a sudden, I couldn't tell what was me and what was my surroundings. When I came down off that mountain, I had a clear knowing that I wanted to leave my corporate job, move to India, and become a yoga teacher. At that time, back in the very early 2000s, people thought I was definitely crazy for leaving my corporate job and going to India. This was way before Eat, Pray, Love ever came out. So needless to say, after my first trip to India, I went back home and I began to wrap up my life. I left my job, I became a renunciate and just started giving all my possessions away, packed up my bag, and moved to India. During my stay in India, I did so much more than learn how to be a yoga and meditation teacher. It really expanded my awareness doing volunteer work and really moving myself outside of my comfort zone. During my yoga teacher training, I knew that part of my training was going to include 1 week, maybe 2 weeks of silence. I had seen everyone that came before me doing at least 1 or 2 weeks of silence. So when I heard it was my turn to go into silence, it's exciting. It means you're going to that next level of teacher training. So after my 2 weeks of silence, I was pretty raring to go to come out of silence and start the next phase of my facilitator training to be a yoga teacher. Well, at the end of that 2 weeks, I received a note from the yoga teacher that said, "Stay in silence indefinitely." This blew my mind because indefinitely means there's no end. And I was literally counting the days and moments to come out of silence and start my life again. This indefinite period of silence ended up going for 6 months. I could write several books on what I realized, what I experienced, and what happened during that 6 months. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to briefly overview it, that it was 6 months of silence with me not speaking to anyone, no one speaking to me. And during that 6 months, I did anywhere from 15 to 17 hours of yoga and meditation each day. At some point in this silence, it might have been 3 or 4 months into it, I'm not really sure, because time began to kind of lose its form and structure during this time. But I would say maybe halfway through this 6 months of silence, I remember sitting in meditation one day with my eyes closed, and all of a sudden, my spine began to vibrate. This vibration began to go up my spine, and then my entire body was vibrating. I remember opening my eyes with little slits and seeing everything in the room become blurry and as though it was also vibrating. In this vibration, I clearly heard a male and female voice speak in unison, and the message said, "Ecstatic dance is the new yoga." Well, at first, my first knee-jerk reaction was like, are you kidding me? And I thought this was God speaking to me, because I felt it was God speaking to me first, in the first place, to tell me to leave my corporate job and become a yoga teacher. And so when I heard this voice, I thought, okay, this must be the voice of God. And how dare you, God? How dare you give me my next mission? I haven't finished the first mission. I'm halfway into my teacher training here to become a yoga teacher, and I feel like you're giving me my next mission. By the way, what the heck is ecstatic dance? I knew what dance was, but I could not figure out what ecstatic dance meant at this time. With no frame of reference, I had to sit in silence and ponder this. When I finally got to come out of silence, it was a godsend that when I came out of silence, there was a woman at the ashram who had come for her own personal healing journey. She approached me and said, I know you've been in silence, and I just felt really called to speak with you. Turned out she was an ecstatic dance facilitator. She had trained with Gabriel Roth in the 5 rhythms modality, and she was willing to sit down and give me a training at the ashram. So the 5 rhythms training and that modality, that container, was the first kind of version of ecstatic dance that was presented to me. It was great. She led a 2-hour dance journey at the ashram, and we all became drunk on ecstasy. I did notice, though, however, the next 2 or 3 days that ecstatic feeling didn't really go away, and it did kind of turn to this feeling of ungroundedness and being kind of spacey. So it took quite some time for me to get grounded after the session. Once I completed my teacher training and all of my activities at the ashram and was ready to leave, my first stop ended up being Germany. When I got to Germany, I had a friend there who said they wanted to take me to an ecstatic dance nightclub. I thought, wow, what is this going to be like? We get to this amazing space in Munich, Germany, and we go to this ecstatic dance nightclub. Essentially, they have all these different forms of ecstatic dance and alternative movement classes during the week, and then Friday night and Saturday night, it becomes like a discotheque, except no drugs, no smoking, and they're playing really great music like it's an ecstatic dance. So we arrive, and I can't believe there's a woman DJing. She has malas on. She looks like she's traveled through India. She has her shrine set up. I found out her shrine actually came from Bhutan. The music was phenomenal, all the music that I love, and it just looked like a huge room full of yogis dancing and going wild. During this experience, I remember walking up the stairs to go sit with my friend and get a drink of water. And as I was walking up the stairs, I had a very transcendental experience. And I felt so altered, I had to ask my friend, do you think somebody would have slipped something in my drink? He said, no, that's not how it is here. It turned out what I was feeling was the ecstasy in the room. That was it. I knew this was for me, and that began my research, my studies, my embodiment, my practicing of all forms of alternative and ecstatic dance that I could find. So I'll tell you more in another video about my life. For now, I think that is enough. You know that I've gone to India, and while in silence, I got the message that ecstatic dance is the new yoga, and that set me on a course for the next 20 years. And here we are today. You're watching this video. I've created Heal Through Dance online. I've created an online course. You can get the book Heal Through Dance or the audio book, and you can start to embody the wisdom that I've been able to bring into this beautiful body of work. Thanks for listening to some of my life story. I'm Arielle Starr, and I'll see you in another video.